This episode is sponsored by Blue Ocean Global Technology. Hi, I'm Laura Virili, and I inspire advisors to kill it online through social media and offline through relationship management. In today's episode, I'm interviewing an industry veteran. Why? Because we're at a key inflection point in the industry. Therefore, I wanted to speak with someone who has been a planner, educator, and advisor for over 38 years to get his point of view of where we've been and where we're going. Vern Hayden has been a certified financial planner since 1978 and is considered a financial planning pioneer. He is the founder and president of Hayden Wealth Management Group. Vern is a regular commentator on several leading national news and financial television programs that appear on CNBC, NBC, Fox News, Bloomberg, and PBS. CNBC branded Vern Mr. Mutual Fund and has praised him as one of the leading financial planners in this country. Vern is the author of Money, Use It or Lose It, as well as Getting an Investing Game Plan, Creating It, Working It, Winning It. He is currently writing a book of stories and checklists entitled, How Do I Know You Won't Steal My Money? Vern also conducts financial education programs on behalf of many companies and charities and is a sought-after speaker at financial and industry conventions. Vern Hayden, it is so great to have you.
Thanks, Laura. It's such a pleasure to be with you. It's so much fun. I've heard so much about you.
Ditto. And I have done so much research on you. I think I need actually another week to prepare for this interview, but here we are. So tell me what drew you to the financial services industry, the planning industry. I know you've been in the industry since 1978, and before that, you were in the military?
Well, I was in the military in the Air Force until 1968. I got out. I didn't want to work for a big company again, like the government was a big company, right?
Sure, yes.
And so I decided to go into sales. And I got two jobs, selling real estate and insurance. I hated insurance, even though, it's a real great necessity in financial planning. But in those days, you're an insurance salesman and, it's like you got the suede shoes on and all that kind of stuff. I didn't really like it. Right. And then I got invited to a meeting. Somebody said there's something called financial planning going on. And there's some guys having a meeting about that. You want to come? I said, yeah. So I heard the message about instead of talking about one thing, you learn a lot more about people and you can help them solve all their other problems financially.
Right.
Or get people that can help you help them and that kind of stuff. Anyway, the whole concept appealed to me. Got me out of life insurance, although I actually did more life insurance as a result of planning without trying to do it.
Of course.
Simply because there were great needs and they were realistic.
That's right.
And you could be honest about it.
That's exactly right. So I believe I had read or I had heard that you were one of the first students to be in these financial planning class?
I was in the first group of CFPs to become a CFP.
Right.
But I wasn't too impressed with what was going on, and I thought, gee, maybe this is just another short-term thing and all that, and I dropped out. Normally, if I like something, I don't drop out, but I did. And then I followed it closely and realized, they're really going to make something out of this. There really is something called financial planning, not just selling tax shelters. And so I climbed on board in 1978 and went ahead and got the CFP. Wow. And the paradox of all that is I end up years later, from 1990s, the early part, for 5 years on the board of the College for Financial Planning, which created the CFP designation.
That's right.
And that was quite a paradox.
Oh my gosh. So what have you seen in terms of the industry and where we were and where we're going and any of your thoughts or your point of view or your perspective on it?
My point of view about the involvement of financial planning is it hasn't been the companies, even though they might want to take the credit for it.
Sure.
It has not been the big brokerage houses and all that led the way at all. They stumbled when they tried to do it and failed totally at trying to do it in the beginning. But to give a better understanding of the involvement, let me give you an example of a guy named Bob. Bob sold drugs for one pharmaceutical company. He was a leading salesman, made a ton of money.
Yep.
They loved him. He saved money up. He said, I'd rather have access to a whole lot of drugs and stuff, pharmaceutical supplies to give to customers. And so he bought a pharmacy. And when he got the pharmacy, he could help people go to the shelves and get, the best of anything.
Right.
And listen to their problems and give them a little advice on the side. Well, he really did well. His store just really grew, tons of customers. And then he decided, I think what I'd like to do is become a doctor. And so he sold his pharmacy, went off to medical school, and became a doctor. In financial planning, a lot of us way back when started as salesmen for something, a product company,
Sure.
insurance company, a mutual funds, or whatever it might be.
Yep.
And the whole game was sales. And then some of us decided, well, we'd like to have more than just that one company that we represent.
Yep.
In fact, I got fired by Manufacturers Life, okay, because I refused to put my new securities license with them. And I did it with a little broker-dealer across the Highway 101 in California. It's in Marin County, just north of San Francisco.
Right.
And boy, there was a great marketing guy there, and he really got me excited about financial planning. You needed a securities license. So I told my agent at Manufacturers Life about that. He said, you can't do that. You got a license with our broker-dealer.
Of course.
And I
Sure.
said, well, your broker-dealer doesn't know anything about financial planning, can't even spell it. And so he said, well, I'll give you a week to change your mind. If you don't, then I'm going to have to fire you. So a week later, I called him up and said, I'm not going to change my mind. So I got fired, and now I'm out there alone and have to make some money. But that's another story, because I really enjoyed marketing.
Yep.
I was able to develop a great client within about 6 months and made enough money to finally get my own office and that kind of thing. But it was really different.
So what made you not sign? What was the thought behind, hey, you know what, I'm not signing. You can fire me. You can take all the time in the world. Obviously they gave you a week, but you said sorry. Like what was your thought process behind
Well,
that?
I'm kind of the strange guy that tends to listen to clients,
Oh, okay.
And in the process of trying to sell some life insurance based on estate planning, of course, back
Yep.
then. And boy, they kept saying, well, do you know anything about how I should set up this investment that I'm working on? Or do you know anything about mutual funds or anything? And I really didn't.
Okay.
And so there were other things that I could serve clients on if I had a broader resource. So that really moved me in that direction. And when I connected with the small broker-dealer, the guy that was the president of, a guy named George Huff, a graduate of West Point, he was one of the most fabulous marketers I have ever met, even to this day. And he's the one that kind of led me in that direction. And it felt good, it felt right, because now I can sit down with clients and really just talk about their problems and figure out how to solve them.
And how to solve them.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Speaking of mutual funds, I've heard that you were dubbed Mr. Mutual Fund. And that term came from when you were doing the series on CNBC?
Well, when I first got invited to be on CNBC, and I didn't have a PR person at all in those days, I just got a phone call.
Right.
And they said, we got your name from the IAFP headquarters back then, the Financial Planners headquarters.
Got it.
The old name before FPA. And your name came up in the net. We wanted the list of CFPs in the tri-state area, being New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut.
Yeah.
So I just got caught up in the net. And she said, we'd like to invite you to be on a program 7 o'clock at night called The Money Club with Bill Griffith originally.
Yep.
And she said, now you pick the subject and call me back and I'll see if Bill approves it. So I thought long and hard, and I had read every book that two great marketing pros wrote, Al Reese and Jack Trout.
Yep.
The first book I read was Marketing Warfare, and anybody that wants to really learn about marketing, even though these books are somewhat dated these days, they are just full of gems when it comes to marketing. Anyway, the one point they made that I kind of swallowed really well was, don't try to be too many things to people. Pick one thing that you can really be good at.
Right.
And where the message is simple and you can communicate it. So I thought about that before I called the gal back at CNBC. I said, I think mutual funds might fit the bill. So I think I want to be known as somebody that knows a lot about mutual funds. And I didn't want to be known as a financial planner because it meant too many things to different people.
Right.
And so I backed off of that. So my first subject was load funds versus no load funds. And boy, I had a lot of fun with that. I went through the interview. I was really nervous the first time with Bill sitting across the table from him, but I knew the subject really well. And he, had a lot of good questions to ask. And so I answered those, and then I got off the set, and this gal came up and gave me the high five and said, "You're on our A team."
Oh, wow.
So the coaching I had went back a ways from a real professional director. And I called him before. He said, be high energy and talk fast, because you have a tendency to talk slow and you have a tendency to be a bit laid back. And so I did those two things, and he said, of course, you know your subject. And it worked like a charm. That ended up a whole series over 10 years of being interviewed about 317 times. It built my business, and Bill Griffith branded me as Mr. Mutual Fund, because every time I got invited back, it was about a mutual fund subject.
Oh, wow. And you did what? How many episodes?
317. That includes Bloomberg later, as well as a couple things on NBC and ABC, that kind of stuff.
So that obviously exploded your business, and that was pre-social media.
Yeah.
And what did you learn from that? And what advice would you give to the advisors and planners out there today that have access to social media? In terms of marketing their own business?
I think I would, the biggest mistake I've made in my career is that I never had a niche. I never specialized, because in the beginning I was only doing seminars, which worked like a charm.
Sure.
But all kinds of people come to the seminars, they sign up for an interview, they eventually become a client, and all that. So I did that for years and years. And then I got the television thing going, and people came from all directions, different kinds. And so I never had a niche. I didn't just go to doctors, I didn't go to architects, I didn't go to dentists, anything like that. But I would advise planners today to pick a niche and to go after that niche. You're a great coach, and you tell your clients all the time to do that.
That's right.
And it's one of the best pieces of advice you could ever give.
Absolutely.
Too late for me. I don't.
No, it's not. No, it's not. But you're spot on, because my coaching applies to all professionals, but my niche is financial advisors, financial planners, because that's where I've been for the past 20 some odd years. So I am niching, and that's where the success comes from. But
if you're the go-to person and the expert in one field for one kind of professional or whatever, then you can develop a fabulous practice.
That's it. That's exactly right.
You develop all the skills necessary to serve that kind of clientele.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So you've written 2 books. You've got a third one in the works. I have your original here, Money, Use It or Lose It, and Getting and
It's kind of confusing. Getting an investing game plan. I didn't do the cover, so.
I was going to say, Vern, you didn't do this cover.
You're not the first one to try to, read.
I'm like, you forgot the D.
Right.
Getting and. I'm kidding. Totally kidding.
I couldn't change it. It's funny.
Yeah, no, it's fabulous. So what prompted you to write these books, and why are you now writing a third book?
Well, to be frank with you, the reason I wrote books was to get more business. And I never expected to make a ton of money in the books. The first book sold more than the second book, and I self-published the first book. But those were the days where there was only one other person writing, and that was the first lady of financial planning, the best person, not just lady, but person to communicate financial planning.
Wow.
Way back in the late 60s and through the 70s, Vanita Van Caspel. And she did seminars in the big department stores and all that. And she had PBS shows every year, 12 shows a year for many years. And she was fabulous. And so she's the one that kind of had books that were selling. But her books kept getting fatter and fatter, more stuff. I thought, maybe I can write a skinny book and leverage off of her.
That's exactly
right. And I called her up and kidded her. And I said, here's what I'm doing, honey. I hope you don't mind. She said, no, I'll help you sell it.
You can never be too skinny or too rich, right?
So I said, yeah, right. So I sold more copies of that book than the one that was published by John Wiley.
Wow.
But this.
So you were self-publishing before that was in vogue. You're
I guess.
You're ahead of the curve on
I
everything,
hired
Vern.
an editor. There was nothing on. Well, there was. I hate to say this. There was no internet. There were no computers. I mean.
I predate the internet too. I hear you.
But I never lived in a cave. Okay, I mean.
Well, I feel like we're going backwards, though. I really feel like we tend to want to live in a cave at this point because everyone's now connecting through stories. Everything is story, story,
Right,
story. I mean,
right.
of course, Billy Joel has garnered much success through his
Sure.
song lyrics because he tells stories. The same thing with Taylor Swift. But I feel now that, especially with social media, for advisors and planners, they need to share their story and they need to
Right.
humanize themselves
Yeah.
online because their online presence is their digital first.
Yeah.
That's where people are going. They're Googling you before they do
Yeah.
anything. They see you on
Yeah.
this interview. They're going to Google you and
Sure.
what do they find? And that's really where you need to share your story.
Right.
And in terms of your story, I would love to learn more about what you think based on your experience in terms of where we're going with robo-advising and speed, because everything is just so fast right now. And it's
Right.
how do you cut through that noise and what advice do you have around that? It's
I'm
kind of
glad
a bunch of stuff
I'm
in
glad
there.
you asked that because I think that there's a kind of a strange thing going on right now. There's progression and regression going on in the financial planning profession or financial planning in general. And what I mean by progression is thanks to a lot of the younger people, the planners are a lot smarter, a lot more objective these days than from my era, okay?
Right.
In my era, even if you try to be objective, you really weren't because you had to make a commission. In those days, it was all commission.
Oh, okay.
And the most significant change in financial planning is when somebody like me decided to move around the table and sit next to the client on their side.
Oh, right.
Instead of, buyer beware, instead of that conflict going on and a super sales process, all that baloney changes when you really start coming at it from a client's standpoint. And that was maybe the biggest change that has happened. But these younger planners,
Right.
like, I mentored a couple that got their master's degrees from a major university, and then one of them decided to go on and become a doctor. So 2 or 3 of us wrote recommendation letters, and she got accepted, and she's starting actually next fall to work on her doctorate degree.
Oh, wow.
And when you bring that kind of sophistication and professionalism to financial planning, it takes it to a whole new level. I credit this generation, actually part of the last generation, not my generation, but part of the last generation, the Millennials coming on and so forth, with really taking it to the next level, which is a much more professional level, where you're really dealing with all the professional issues in somebody's life. And, I call it the value zone, where the value zone is where a planner is meeting with a client. I don't care if it's Merrill Lynch or an independent broker dealer or whatever. When you boil it all down,
Yep.
it's what happens in that value zone between a planner and a client that makes the difference. And that becomes the value. And that's what a lot of corporate execs in this business do not understand. They really
Right.
have a foggiest idea of what's going on, except academically, so to speak.
Exactly.
But anyway, the regression is the fact that, as you kind of alluded to, we got the robo-advisors and all that kind of thing. It's kind of the dehumanization process that gradually is going on.
Yep.
Now, obviously, it's more acceptable by the younger generations.
Yeah.
But I even find some of them, and believe it or not, we do have a few millennials some are just starting out, and they were actually kids of parents that were clients, that kind of thing. And
fun.
it's very exciting.
It is
because
exciting.
they forced me to go into the thing on the whatever social, all the doing it on computer
Yeah,
and
that's
internet,
right, yeah.
et cetera. A year ago at my age, I took a graduate course, and the title of the graduate course is The Future of Leadership and Management, and it's through a university. And it was all on the internet. It took me a week, and I had to hire a graduate gal to help me find the course. There were 17 of us in the course in about 8 different states, and the professor was in Michigan.
Right.
Never met any of them through the whole course.
Isn't
It was
that
3
amazing?
months long,
Oh
and it was about 13 hours a week. I mean, there was a total
intense.
dedication, one of the best courses I have ever had.
Wow.
And I want a whole nother lifetime to apply a lot of it. But I then learned that how effective the internet can be. My generation has a tendency to kind of back away and be scared of it.
Right.
I was too, and I said, well, I'm scared of a lot of things. I jump right in and get wet and maybe kill myself, or who knows what, you know. And so this was an experiment
Right.
to see if I could handle it.
Yep.
And I
Of
did.
course you can handle it.
And it was one of the greatest experiences I had in the last several years.
Wow.
And so now I have a deeper appreciation for how much can actually happen through the internet.
Yeah. So much can happen, and obviously education is
Yeah.
happening through the internet.
Huge.
Connections are happening through the internet, and tons of business is happening
Yes.
through the internet.
Yeah.
It's truly transformed our entire
Yep.
industry, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, the trick is, not the trick, but the challenge is to still humanize
Right.
all of this,
That's
okay?
right. That's right.
Because you do have all this robo stuff going on.
Yep.
It's interesting to see that some of the robo folks have hired or bought companies that have live advisors
That's right.
to help
Of course.
back up the robo, you know? and I think there'll be more of that. The robos, in my estimation, will not make it until they humanize
That's right.
their process, even though I heard the founder of one of the robos, which will be unmentioned, saying how they can totally run everybody's life, which is absolutely untrue as far as I'm concerned.
Well, business happens and relationships happen when you
Yeah.
are eyeball to eyeball. Things don't
Right.
happen over the computer, as convenient
Right.
as it is. It's
Yeah.
this will never go away ever.
Yeah, even dating sites, I mean, eventually they have to meet,
That's true.
you know?
Can't be online forever.
Yeah.
Eventually, you want to meet that person.
Yeah,
for sure.
right.
Yeah.
So it's a paradox that we have all this advanced technology, and it's outstripped the humanistic elements have not kept up and can't keep up with the technology.
Right.
The technology, there has to be some kind of a synthesis between the two. And it is happening, I think, a lot.
I believe
We've
you're
been
right,
able
yeah.
to synthesize it to a great degree.
That's right.
I mean, we use all this stuff, and yet it's a human process.
That's right.
So-
That's right. Yeah, and I believe the millennials will certainly take note of that, because they
Yeah.
certainly watch what's going on. They're smart enough to watch what's going on, where
Right.
other generations were like, oh, we know it all. But the millennials are smart enough to take what they learn online and apply it in life. And also they have a respect
Right.
for their parents.
Right.
So that's refreshing.
I recently hired a millennial as somebody to help me on this book I'm writing, and she's doing all the fact checking and some of the resource stuff. And this is a fun book, by the way. I'm not quite sure when I'm going to finish it, but I will finish it. The title of it is "How Do I Know You Won't Steal My Money?"
I love that title.
Now, that didn't come from Madoff or anything.
Oh.
I actually thought of the title of it before Madoff. But once I had a dentist client bring in a new prospective client.
Right.
And in the middle of our conversation, he stopped and he looked at me. He said, "Vern, how do I know you won't steal my money?"
You said, hold on a second, let me write that down. It's a great book title.
Yeah, right. Nobody had ever asked me that before or since. But I thought it's a great title.
That is
So
a great
my
title.
answer was, you don't know. And if you don't know, what should you be asking me and checking on about me? And then we created a list of things. Well, the book is really going to be some stories about people that I knew that went crooked, and mostly in California days, and a series of chapters on all the subjects that people are presented with, whether it's annuities, variable annuities, index annuities, mutual funds, stock, and it'll be a 10-point checklist at the end of each chapter.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
And really what the thing is that they're talking about.
Sure.
So that people could pick it up like a handbook and say, okay, you're trying to sell me this. Let me ask you 10 questions.
So they can have a higher level conversation
Yes.
with their planner or their advisor, because now they're more informed because they have
Right.
all of your experience and knowledge
Yeah.
in this book, and then there's a checklist for each.
So I'm anxious to get that done. I'm going to self-publish it, or I'll probably do on the internet an ebook.
Oh, very cool.
And that kind of stuff, because I think it'll be a lot of fun. I don't care if I make money with it. It's just going to be a lot of fun.
That's what we need.
So-
We need more fun.
But I'm using a millennial to prop me up.
And spread the word via social, right?
Yeah, right.
Vern, tell me about your process in terms of you meet someone for the first time, a prospect, you're like, gosh, this is a great prospect. You have a great marketing technique. Can you share that with the audience?
I'm glad you asked that, because I've had so much fun doing this over the years, and I've actually got clients doing it. What I do, like for instance, I was sitting in the chair with my eye doctor,
Yep.
and he was doing all kinds of things with my eye and all that kind of stuff. And then as we finished, and as I got up from the chair, I put my hand in my pocket and I pulled this out. And this says, our name. And the saying on it, I think, is really important, because and people love to see this. Money is never our client. Real people are. And that's all I've got on the front of our big brochure.
Sure.
But this is like a little calling card or whatever.
That's
and
right.
I hand
That's right.
this to the doctor, and I said, hey, if you want to work with the best financial planner in the country, take a look at this. And on the back of it, it has some remarks, testimonials, so to speak,
Yep.
things that I've written, and some background, and where I put on workshops for various companies and stuff. Well, the doctor's wife called me in about 4 weeks and said, we'd like to set up an appointment with you. Now, that has been duplicated several times over the years, but I suggest every planner that, I know you live off referrals, of course,
Sure.
but it's always fun to do this. And it's just nice to have it. It's more than a business card, and they're going to pay attention to that.
That's right. And it's
So I
not
have fun.
overwhelming. It's not
Yes,
overwhelming.
right,
And they
right.
don't lose it on their desk because it's not too small,
Right.
and it's not too big, so that they're not overwhelmed. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
What a fantastic
Yeah.
idea. Thank you for sharing that. Is this your quote? Money is never our client, real people are?
I claim that it is my quote, but like almost everything, you probably steal your ideas from somewhere and forget where you got it. I don't know where I got that.
We're
but-
going to make it yours. It's now officially
No
yours.
royalties, because maybe I wasn't,
We could always Google it, right?
Yeah, right.
So now you have the prospect, or now that prospect has become a client.
Yeah.
What happens when now they're in your office and you're taking them through the
Let me
process?
use an analogy to describe the process, because I think a lot of planners have never been taught how that process really should work. So the analogy I'm going to use is, there was a guy standing on a street corner in the city, and he saw another guy rob a grocery store.
Right?
And the robber got away. So the cops came to the scene and asked the witness to come to the police station with him, which he did.
Right.
At the police station, they put him in a room with a police artist. So the artist is at the easel waiting for the witness to describe what this person looked like.
Right.
So the guy said, well, he kind of had, square chin and big eyes and that kind of stuff. So the artist starts going to work.
Right.
And the artist said, well, did he have hair? And he said, yeah, I had, quite a bit of hair, but started to bald, where most men do. And some other things. And then the artist goes ahead and puts some ears on him, puts a nose on him, and a mouth and all that.
Yep.
And the witness sits back and said, no, the ears weren't that big. They were, a lot smaller.
Yep.
And the nose was a little bit off center and so forth. And the smile was just about right. And they went on back and forth
Yep.
for probably a couple of hours, until finally the witness sat back and said, you got him. That's what he looked like. You got the picture. That's the way I recall he really looked. So they printed it up, sent it out, and they caught the robber. Okay. Well, obviously, how does that apply to financial planning in the process? Well, who's the best witness to the situation about all their finances and stuff? Well, your client is.
That's right.
And who's the artist? Well, the financial planner is the artist.
Right.
At its highest level, you're an artist. And so the financial planner goes through that give and take process with a client. So you don't do a computerized financial plan and present the plan.
Right, right.
That's the worst way to do financial planning. I mean, the industry went through a long period where that was the answer. We fill out all the data sheets and information
Because we all
sheets,
love to look at
send
charts
it
and graphs.
Send it to the home office and get this nice 100-page computerized plan back.
Right.
And of course, when some of the planners try to present that, they get to page 6, and the client says, "Oh, by the way, we've changed our mind about that." Okay, that isn't really the way we feel. We've changed our mind. So their whole financial plan just got thrown in the basket,
Right.
because that triggered all these other things, and they were all mistakes.
Right.
So planners have to think about the nature of information. First of all, information is both subjective and objective.
Right.
Okay? Objective. I own a house, I got $1 million in the bank, and so forth. That's all objective stuff. The subjective stuff is the important stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, client, what does that mean to you?
Right.
What does that $1 million mean to you? What, are you going to live in this house forever? How about your car? You know, you get into all the financial stuff, and you got to get that subjective appraisal. The second thing about information is that it's dynamic. It's not
That's right.
static,
That's right.
as we learn with a computerized
changing,
plan.
right? It changes.
And so you got to stay with changes. You know, we don't stay with changes. I heard a person say, this is not my quote, I stole it and I forget the name of the guy. I think it was the president of a watch company that said, if you don't like change, you will like irrelevance even less. You know?
That's true, very true.
And so you got to enable clients to change as well as be dynamic and flexible and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then there's also a big difference, still talking about information, between the mental, the brain type decisions and the emotional. Yeah. And in the long run, I would say that the emotional always wins out.
That's
okay?
Right. That's right.
So if a planner doesn't address the emotional issues as well as the brainy type issues, it's going to be tough to do financial planning. And one of the biggest challenges for a planner is to, first of all, assess the comfort zone that a client is in.
Right, right, right.
What is it this client is comfortable with?
Right.
Okay? Does the client like to read? Does he like to look at the internet? Or she? And, you know, that kind of thing.
Right.
You got to know that. And then you can determine whether or not you have to help them expand their comfort zone in order to reach their goals.
Well, do they, so how would a planner help them expand their comfort zone? Like some clients probably are very risk adverse and they say, nope, I just want to stay right here in this little comfy, cozy comfort zone.
Absolutely. It's a great question and it's a great challenge for every planner. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, here's one approach to solve that problem, help expand. Education is a big deal. Find out whether this client in their existing comfort zone likes to learn about things, okay? And then you don't force feed them information.
Right.
You give them simple information, match what they can understand, simplify everything, okay?
Yeah.
So you can communicate. Don't tell them how great you are or any of that stuff. Just simplify.
And listen. You have to listen, because when you spend time with people, with individuals, clients,
right,
and you listen,
right,
you learn so much, and you pick active listening, and you pick up on things. You'll pick up on fears.
Absolutely.
You'll pick up on goals. You'll pick up on what keeps them up at night without even asking them.
Right.
Yeah.
And then here's the real challenge. You've got to have a way as a planner to have them participate in the process. If you're just presenting a plan, they're not participating.
Right.
So you may have to look at the planning process entirely different. How do you get them to participate? Well, first of all, every meeting with a client, use an agenda.
Right.
And on that agenda, you know all the issues you're going to deal with, maybe not in one meeting, but in several meetings.
Yep.
But prioritize the things that match how important it is to the client.
Right, right.
I don't care what your agenda is. Do the client's agenda.
That's right. And then they know where you're going.
Right.
There's no mystery there. And you're empowering them.
And at the end of every agenda, and it's all going to be interaction. You might have some, projections on
Sure.
retirement planning, and you're going to bring those out and go over that. If you do this, is what you get. So,
Yep.
it's one of the biggest uses, but it's within the context of an agenda.
Yep.
And then as you move through the agenda, addressing the most important issues, then you get to a point where, maybe they've been there an hour and a half and things are getting a little bit
And they're
tiring, if
glazing
not
over.
boring. And so you set the next meeting. But
Right.
before you do, you summarize what you accomplished in this meeting
Right.
by looking at the agenda, and then you create an agenda for the next meeting.
Right.
And the client is going to have some homework to do, and we have some homework to do.
Right. There's accountability.
And you keep going through that, and then at some point, implementation is a natural and automatic result of that kind of a process.
Right. Of course.
Okay, so many computerized, or in the old days, typewritten plans sat on shelves,
Yep.
gathered dust, and never made a difference in a person's life. This way, it can make a difference in a person's life. So that's important for them to do. Now, once they get them to participate in the process,
Yep.
then they got to create a vision for the client.
Yeah.
Here's what it's going to look like when you accomplish this. Your son is going to end up going to your alma mater, maybe, or the school of their
His
choice,
choice.
that
Yep,
kind
yep,
of thing.
yep.
And get them to be able to visualize, and then over time, what happens is you are developing trust. And another thing planners have to be careful of, and I learned this the hard way a couple of times because I stumbled. When you create an expectation up front or a promise up front,
Right.
you've got to perform consistent with that promise.
Yeah.
And that's what will build the trust over time, where you have good solutions, good recommendations, and that kind of stuff. But when they take that whole process so seriously,
Yeah, of course.
then it's going to make a difference in their life. So don't just deliver a financial plan.
How often do you revisit the plan? Because obviously life changes, situations change. How often should a planner, or what are the guidelines around that to make sure that the client is on track to meet those goals?
Right. Well, initially with a new client, we generally meet with them quarterly.
Okay.
And then we almost let them set the time frame once the planning process has been completed.
Got it.
Then we meet quarterly after that.
Right.
And then it's at least an annual checkup.
Yep.
And we bring out, the notes on the planning that we did,
Yep.
and, find out where they're at and make sure they're accomplishing their goals. What did we do between, January of last year and this year?
Got
Did
it.
we make any headway?
Right.
You know?
Do we need to readjust?
It's nice to make headway, And
We all like that, right?
and it's goal oriented,
Yeah.
And some people are very goal oriented.
Yeah.
Some aren't really that goal oriented. They are experience oriented,
Interesting.
which is a little bit different. It's kind of a nuance, but
Right.
most
So, but it's really knowing your client.
Yes.
You really have to know your client.
Yeah,
and that's,
exactly.
And I believe you were saying when you really know your client, that's when they fall in love with you and they feel like they can't leave you because they're so in love
Yeah.
with you that they can't imagine navigating their life without
Right.
you.
Yeah, that's like the final point of what I tell a lot of planners is, to be successful, it's the skills you have,
Yep.
the demand for those skills, which takes you into marketing and sales,
That's right.
and then what kind of character are you?
Right.
That comes out.
Oh, sure.
It's like I play a lot of handball about 3 times a week even now.
Oh, my
and,
gosh.
And the saying, a lot of people said, well, handball or any other sport builds character. I differ with that statement by saying what it does is it reveals character.
Oh.
And that's
right.
much more important and effective is to do that. Then the final point that I like to tell them is make it really hard to replace you. So if they're thinking maybe they want to, or somebody else is giving them a real sales job on trying to steal the client away from me,
Right.
make it very difficult for them by loving your client, following through with service. Service is so important. It's kind of like the gal at Starbucks who saw this guy coming in that couldn't speak. It was all sign language, and she didn't know near to anybody else, so it was kind of hard. So she learned sign language for this one customer.
Wow.
And
Wow. Talk about customer service.
and that's right.
Wow.
And she
Good
did
for
sign
her.
language with this guy. And that guy brought in more business.
Of course. 'Cause he sold all of his friends.
He had all those signed people coming in,
He signed to two friends, and they
Yeah.
signed to two friends.
Yeah, but it's service.
And it's service, and that goes back to the culture of Starbucks because of how I believe it's Howard Schultz.
Yeah.
The culture that he's put into place to service his employees.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, that permeates out.
Yeah.
And to the point where those employees or
Yes.
associates, whatever they're called at Starbucks, feel that passionate that they want to serve the clients
Right,
coming through the door, that
exactly.
they actually go out and enhance their skill set.
This brings another point to mind, and it's about this is an Indian fellow from the country of India that
Right.
took over one of the biggest IT companies in the world called HCL Industries.
Okay.
If you go to their homepage, you're going to see something startling. What the homepage says is employees first, customers, clients second.
That is startling, but it's true.
Now, why? I absolutely believe that. I even
too.
tell our people that employees are first.
That's right.
Why is that? If you treat your employees properly, automatically they're going to treat the clients
Exactly.
the way they want to be treated.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. And
It's so simple.
it
How did we
is.
lose sight of that? Over
But he had a
time?
hard time selling that to his board.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, because it's such a wild, crazy thing to say. What do you mean? It sounds selfish. Well,
Right.
maybe it is, but it works.
It absolutely
And then
does.
the customer wins, or the client wins in the long run.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. So do you do passion prospecting? You said you play handball 3 times a week.
Yes.
Do you get clients through this
You know,
activity?
I have never tried to get clients through that, but I've gotten several clients because of it.
That's right.
I could name a few, dentists and, that kind of stuff.
That's amazing.
And once when
Times a week.
Brenda Butner of CNBC fame and now she has this program every Saturday morning called Bulls and Bears.
Yep.
She did an hour special on me after her program was closed down, called the Money Club, after
Yep.
it was closed down. And she had 3 in this special she was doing. One was Don Phillips, the managing director of Morningstar.
Yep.
Another was Sheldon Jacobs, who had the No Load Fund newsletter in those days,
Right.
and showed him getting into his Mercedes and Don walking the halls of Morningstar. And then it showed me playing handball.
Oh, how cool.
And it was fun. So
Because you love it. You
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Obviously, you still play 3 times a week.
yeah, I still play in tournaments, 2 tournaments a year.
Oh, my God.
And that kind. I always make sure if it's doubles that I get a young partner.
So smart. You're so smart. What's on the horizon for you? Obviously, you have a book coming out, but what else do you see for Vern
Well,
Hayden?
I still am. I sold my business 9 years ago to a bank, but
Okay.
it's like they barely exist. We continue to run it,
Very
manage
nice.
it,
Yep.
and I make sure the other people are playing more of a starring role all the time. I've had enough. I just want to step back and let them have some of the spotlight and everything, and they're doing a great job.
Employees first.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So we'll probably continue to do that. I've got a little bit of a venture going on in China. I gave a speech there last year in Chengdu. I was the opening keynote speaker for the Chengdu annual exhibition.
Beautiful.
And incidentally, in the middle of my speech, I said, hey, your president, Xi Jinping, asked me to introduce a new sport in China, and you're the first ones to see it. And I pulled a handball out of my pocket, and I bounced it into the audience to see if the Chinese had a sense of humor,
Right.
Well,
And?
they were shocked at first, but a gal caught the ball, and pretty soon they were tossing the ball around
Oh, neat.
in the audience, and we had a good time with it.
Oh, how fun.
But as a result of that, one of the fellows that owned the company that specialized in cross-border planning, preparing Chinese to move to America, really caught on to my presentation, which was focused on education
Right.
and how Chinese people needed financial education.
Interesting.
And so he wanted to start a project with me to create a curriculum to educate his clients. And once we got the curriculum kind of massaged and perfected to some degree, then we take it to countries, companies throughout China.
Interesting.
And so that's slowly evolving.
That's
But-
that's
but
very
listen,
cool. So you're truly an educator
you
at
know,
heart, and
Yeah, it's
all
a little bit hard to make that 17-hour plane trip, every other month even, but I'm not doing that. But anyway.
do it via the internet, Skype.
Yes, right.
There you go. There's your solution.
Yes.
Vern, thank you so much for your time. This has been
Well,
an
thank
honor
you.
and a pleasure.
You're very inspiring. You get me to chatter about stuff, that I love, and I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
It's been a wonderful thing to be with you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate
Same
it.
here. I'm honored. So thank you so much. I can't wait to read your new book and see what's next on the horizon
Thank
for
you.
you.
I
Thank
can't
you.
wait to finish it. But
Now,
thank you very
now
much.
I'll put you to it.
Yes.
Let's put a date on that. So.
Okay, good. And this was a wonderful experience with you. Thank you so
Same.
much.
Thank you, Vern.
Okay.
If you want to read more about Vern Hayden, you can visit his website at haydenwealthmanagement.com, and all of his accomplishments are listed on his LinkedIn profile. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, swing by LauraVirili.com, follow me on Twitter, and like me on Facebook. Thanks for joining. You want me to start from the top?
I love it.